Hello, welcome back. With the arrival of spring, I have decided to do things differently. With the arrival of spring, I have decided to be fashionable for once. Enough with the classics. On with novelty. Let's make today an adventure. Today we are taking a look at the new Parker 51. Just like a phoenix. A phoenix, I said a phoenix. No, that's a crow. Well, that's more like it. Just like a phoenix, the model is reborn for 2021. But is it worth the excitement and cost? Is it worth your precious time? Or is this pen a vain attempt at being relevant from a very senior brand? The elders deserve unconditional respect. Therefore, let's consider this matter seriously. Did Parker achieve actual rejuvenation? Or is the new 51 just an age-inappropriate fashion statement? In any case, let's be open-minded and fair with the said writing instrument. Let's not throw the fountain pen with the bathwater. The Parker 51 has been a very lucrative design, both for Parker and for imitators. That is why the imitation game started right from the 1940s and continues to this day. A good example of this early imitation would be this Waterman Taperite from the 1940s. I'm currently repairing it. The lever was broken and I have removed the old calcinated rubber sack, so it is currently open. But I have here an example in literature, this one being the gold version. By the way, this is page 84 of a great book about fountain pens called Un amour de stylo. If you are interested, I might do a book review. It's the type of book that compiles useful information for fountain pen collectors. To capitalize on the lucrative properties of the 51, Parker could have indulged in self-plagiarism in releasing an exact clone of the old 51. Instead, they created a brand new design that captures the general aesthetic of the original model while staying as close as possible to what current machinery was already producing. The goal was to innovate as little as possible while facing a minimal amount of challenges. One grows from the avoidance of adversity. Even children know that the toughest of steels are forged in the coldest of fires. Well, if I remember the saying correctly. Since I own and regularly use an aerometric 51 from the 50s, let's start by comparing the two pens. They have very different properties. Capped, the new 51 is the longer pen at 140 mm against 137 for the aerometric. The new 51 is also thicker by 0.1 mm. At the base of the cap, the size difference is reversed when you uncap the pens, the aerometric 51 becoming the elegantly tapered bigger pen. Indeed, it is longer at 127.3 mm against 118.2 for the new one. You might be tempted to nickname the new 51 the short and chubby one. But you would be mistaken, as it is also the thinnest of the two. On the metal ring of the body, the aerometric 51 is thicker by half a millimeter compared to the new version of the 51. 11 millimeters versus 10.5. All of that said, the old pen still looks and feels less chunky, because of the elegant taper, especially at the nib. The nib just disappears, as well as the feed. This is the kind of refinement the new pen got deprived of. Speaking of lack of refinement, the cap of the new pen is fitted with a metal jewel and is equipped with 3 vents to be more aerodynamic when you throw the pen in the trash after realizing you got ripped off. I mean, the cap is equipped with a 3-vented metal jewel for a more modern and industrial look. Everyone knows metal jewels look better, and the world needs more of them. After all, it is well known that a steel jeweled ring is far superior to a diamond ring. Steel is forever, as the saying goes. The cap is brushed with a modern Parker Aero clip, and a polished ring decorates the bottom. Parker Friends Q3 is engraved on it. The older version had Parker 1/10 12-karat rolled gold G engraved on the same spot. I won't judge which one of the 2 versions is more pleasing to the eye. You will tell me in the comments. As a side note, I also own and regularly use another great Parker pen that makes a good comparison, the Parker 45, that I personally prefer to the 51 for a multitude of reasons. It features a modern-looking stylized clip and no jewel on the top, but my opinion is that this execution works much better aesthetically. Plus it has its jewel on the bottom, so it's not deprived from it altogether. I will come back to the 45 later. Let's continue on the 51. The new 51 has a screw cap, which is an advantage, in my opinion, since both my 51 and my 45 uncap themselves under their own weight when I clip them in a jacket or coat pocket. I'm not too concerned about the threading being metal on plastic. All sorts of pens have this, and it has never been an issue to me. Still, I would have liked a clicky snap cap, like on the Waterman Expert. It would have solved the self-uncapping problem without making the pen slower to uncap. The hooded nib is very stiff, just like the original 51, but is more easy to orient correctly on paper since it is less hooded. The Aerometric 51 has a much nicer nib that feels very light on paper, even though the feeling and performance is closer to a marker pen than to a fountain pen. The new 51 feels like a regular, still-nibbed modern fountain pen, except it drags quite a lot on paper. If you are a fast thinker, if you want to feel free, like a balloon, flying in the air, this nib would be a little slow for you. This nib has been compared and matched as identical to the modern jotter nib. To be sure of it, I would have to disassemble the 51, and I haven't managed despite all my efforts. But I will say that my jotter feels smoother, softer, and springier. It is smaller and not as nicely finished, but I enjoy writing with it more than writing with the new 51. What they have in common is the fact that they often hard start on upstrokes. The new 51 isn't particularly well hooded. On the top, the plastic sticks out in a way that reminds the 45, and this part doesn't particularly bother me. It's not as elegant as the closely fitted hood on the Aerometric, and it doesn't expose half of a beautiful 18-karat gold nib like on my 45 Insignia. But I don't mind. It's the bottom part that bothers me. The feed although perfectly functional, is the same as on the jotter and the vector, but aside from the fact these are lower-end pens, what bothers me is the shape of the feed. On the aerometric and on the 45, they are round and smooth. This is very pleasing to the eye. They look smooth and original, unlike other feeds. The hooded design appears as something very different from other fountain pens. On my most frequently used fountain pen, the Lamy 2000, the feed is pretty much hidden. You just see the very top. And it looks significantly better. It seems Parker has forgotten a very basic rule of beauty. When something isn't beautiful, you should hide it, not to tarnish the rest of the design. Another solution to the hooded problem could have been what Waterman did with the taper right. Waterman couldn't make an actual hooded nib equivalent to the 51, so they didn't. They simply disguised a lever filler as a 51 look-alike. To do that, they opted for a semi-hooded nib, but well finished. Parker could have hooded their nib in the same way. The rest of the new 51 is pretty good. I hold the pen on the capping threads, and it's not uncomfortable. The section ring matches the cap in color, so for gold caps, the section ring is gold as well, unlike my aerometric. The bottom of the pen is rounded, unlike the old model that is indented at the very bottom. So, is the new 51 worth your time and resources? There are several ways to look at this. Performance-wise, it's a solid writer, but not the most comfortable one. In its category, budget-wise and nib material-wise, I would say it's clearly inferior to a Pelican M200 or a Waterman Expert 3. Budget-wise, for the same amount I paid this new Parker 51, I got, for instance, this whole Parker collection, but don't mind me. It's only my personal opinion. An educated opinion, but a personal opinion. Plus, there is another way to look at this. You can look at this as a collector. This is another version of the 51 to collect. You get the new 51 as a writing instrument. However, I would greatly recommend, as with any fountain pen, you try it first in person to make sure it suits you. So, in conclusion, is the new 51 worth it? And is it age appropriate for Parker? To that I will cite a Russian proverb. Staroсть не радость, а и смерть не потеха. Old age isn't joy, but death isn't a game. I think Parker has to be supported, just like an old tree that would otherwise collapse under its own weight. Just like this old Robinia pseudo-acacia, planted in 1601 by Jean Robin in the square René Viviani, near Notre Dame. If you want to keep old things, you have to support them. Maybe Parker isn't at its best with the new 51, and maybe this 420-year-old tree looked better in the past. Notre Dame sure looked better before the fire. But to keep Parker on the right track, we should support them in what they do well.